The other night I noticed this weird thing on the living room floor, and I knew it was a cat toy because it was in a corner of the living room where those accumulate when they aren't being played with. The weird part was it looked like a Kaiser roll with an eggshell stuck to it with some dried egg yolk. And I thought, what a weird toy. I wonder what it is. Because, of course, it couldn't be that. About an hour later, Tracy noticed that there was a Kaiser roll on the living room floor in the corner where the cat toys tend to accumulate. The cats must have pulled the roll from the grocery bag we used to store future compost in the kitchen. Stranger yet, there was an eggshell stuck to it with a bit of dried egg yolk. Tracy picked it up, carried it into the kitchen, and put it back inside the compost bag. Welcome to Library Pizza, a podcast about reading. My name is Mike McGinnis. For this episode, I talked to my friend Blorb, who is a cartoon pug, about what we've been reading. I know Blorb from a professional wrestling Discord. She did the art for this podcast, and she is both a delight and a hoot. I'll see you on the other side of my very dignified theme music. Thank you for listening.
Library Pizza! P-I-Z-Z-A! Library Pizza! P-I-Z-Z-A!
So you talked about doing furniture. You talked about doing furniture upholstery. You were doing some of that before you got on the microphone with me. Has your weekend been that exciting generally?
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I got an incredible deal at the antique mall yesterday. So again, I'm moving, right? At the middle of October, I'm moving into a new place. Never have owned property before, and purchasing property, having a panic attack about it on the daily, as one does. So
You should panic.
my friend and I yesterday had a day called that we have been referring to as Thriftaganza, which we went to like 5 different thrift stores and antique malls, and we hydrated. We made sure that we ate. And she was like, I heard about this thing on TikTok where if you go to this fast food chain called Culver's, I don't know if you have a Culver's. I heard it's
Yes.
I'd never heard of a Culver's before.
It's a Midwestern.
It's a Midwestern chain, right? So you can go and you can get a kid's meal, but they don't make kids hamburgers. So you get a friggin' full-size hamburger and like a drink and fries and a scoop of custard with toppings on it for like $7. And we said, in this economy, okay, that's incredible. So we did that, and I have to say, we talked about it for the entire day. We were like, $7? That's crazy. And so we went to a bunch of really dusty, questionable thrift stores, which ran the full gamut of like expensive antiques, with really haunted looking clocks. And then you'd go to other ones that were like sort of pickers and stuff. And they would have a lot of like, I don't know, Trump memorabilia. And you'd say, oh, I think I'm good. And you'd kind of walk around. So, but yeah, we got some really good scores, and we've been working on stripping them down because TikTok really, again, I don't have TikToks, but it's filtered through her. It really led us great with the Culver's thing, but it really made furniture restoration look a lot easier than it actually is. It's not, and it sucks, and nobody should do it. So it's a lie.
Yeah, I get stressed out just like buying the like shelf from Target or whatever and putting together like the thing that any idiot should be able to do.
Yeah.
That is already too much for me. So the idea that I'm going to take like corrosive chemicals and apply them to a surface, and then
I had handfuls of acetone, just like in my bare hands, basically smearing it over this thing, and both of us being like, this is bad, right? Yeah. So I am so flammable right at this moment. I did clean up, but I feel like it's in my bones. But again, thank God we ended up with a particle board dresser. So that's great. That's, it's going to be worth it. Any of the brain cells that I fried.
Yeah, I'm honestly, I'm thinking like particle board dresser, like how much do you trust that thing to hold your clothing and not collapse?
I will say the thing that's is frustrating about this one piece of furniture is that the whole thing is not particle board. There are pieces of it that are real wood, including the drawers, which have all these like fiddly little design elements on them. And so like the fiddly little design pieces and the ornamental pieces on the front are real solid wood that actually have like a wood grain. And then it's like backed by particle board. So you can't even like strip the doors completely down to bare wood because the whole thing isn't wood. parts of it are wood. It's nonsense. The whole thing's nonsense.
Are the most important structural elements particle board? Because
Yes.
the drawers, you could cheap out on the drawers, I think, a lot more safely than you could like
The back of
skeleton.
the back of the drawer is wood, and the front of it is particle board. Like it doesn't make any sense. It's crazy. But it's also become like a vengeance thing at this point, and we're finishing it out of spite. So we'll see how it turns out. But honestly, it's been, I have to say, I love a project. I love a start and a finish. So it's been kind of fun.
The Culvers that we have in Iowa City is this deeply strange. It's up on like a hill. It feels like it should be like a church.
Yeah, I was going to say,
or
it's
something.
calling, like the sun rises at the end of the third day. Yeah.
Like it's off the highway too, and there's like nothing else
Hell yeah.
in the entire like city
Calling you.
that is like this on top of a hill like this. It's just this one thing, and it always feels to me like I must be misremembering it when I think about it. And then because Tracy is much more the Culver person in her household, they like a ice cream treat, they like a novelty.
Yeah.
And so I'll hear about it every now and then, and I just think about the strange, like, dairy wizard that must live there.
I have not had a custard like that in so long. I got the vanilla with the cookie dough on top, and my friend and I just sat in that parking lot at the Culvers in the middle of all of our thrifting, just covered in, like, dust, and just ate that custard in her car, having paid $7 for that kid's meal, and we felt almost as if we were on top of a hill, I have to say, the size of a mountain, because we were so hype about it. It's the little things these days, you know?
Yeah. I let's see, what did I do yesterday? I'm going to edit out all the silence where I try to remember what I did. It's incredible how bad. You know what I did was I edited the last episode of this. That's why it's a blank. I did that. And then I hung out with Tracy, and we had vague plans to watch. We like to, on Fridays and Saturdays, we like to watch art. You know, we like to go onto the Criterion Collection, find like the most confrontational, you know, Hungarian new wave film or whatever, and then like sit through it
and experience it. Yeah.
Yes.
Capital E. Yeah.
Submit to it.
Yeah.
And we just like, and this is kind of a new thing for us. For years and years, for most of my life, my stance has been I don't like movies. Like I felt like I hated submitting to them specifically. I hated just sitting still and letting them happen.
Okay, interesting.
And so, but like for the past like 3 years or something, we've been getting really into it. And so I've been watching like all this really artsy stuff. But yesterday we just didn't have the strength. So we ended up playing, I'm going to remind myself of the name. Oh yeah, it's we played Last Defense Academy, which I don't know if how video game are you as a person?
I am, to a hardcore gamer, they probably hate me. I am here, my problem is I actually don't love very, very open world games. But I love Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate 3, I have put hundreds of hours into that. Fire Emblem 3, hundreds of hours. Hades 2, hundreds of hours. But as soon, like Breath of the Wild, they said, explore the entire world. And I said, that's overwhelming. And I never played. Mass Effect, as soon as you get to explore all those planets and they set you free, I said, I'm stressed out. Like, I just like, so I tend to actually, I think opposed to a lot of people, I like a little bit of railroad. Like the Persona 5, hundreds of hours. Love it. I love kind of like a railroad a little bit, storyline wise, actually. So I don't think I've heard of that one, but.
So this one is, there's a chance you would have heard of Danganronpa?
Yes.
Okay, so it's the person who was like, I guess, the main writer behind that, at least reputationally, and then the main writer behind the like much less successful sort of sister visual novel series like 999, Virtue's Last Reward. Yeah, you're shaking your head because it is somehow is more obscure than the visual novel series Danganronpa. But so they got together and they made their own studio, and they made this game that is like, they had to hire, I don't know how many people to fill the spreadsheet with the time wasting text. You know what I mean? Like visual novels, it's so frustrating because like, they're fun and they're exciting if you're a reader and you're like, I'm playing a video game and I'm reading a book. This is my two favorite things put together into one. But like most of them make a point of disrespecting your time, and that like by having characters say everything like 4 times when once would do it. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. And I've been trying to avoid spoilers, but I've read that there are so many options and choices in this game that at one point they were like, we're going to make it so you can play through 100 different ways.
Jesus.
And I'm here to tell you, I've not made one choice yet, and I'm terrified by the time investment that suggests.
That's so interesting. Have you played Disco Elysium? Speaking of like,
yes.
Yeah, love Disco Elysium. I cry. You find, spoiler alert, you find something at the end of Disco Elysium, and you have this like transcendental experience. And I got that is a video game that you read so goddamn much in that experience, and I really I don't know how they wrote that game. Absolutely wild. But also, I will say, tough for me as a PlayStation console player, trying to read all that tiny text with my bad eyesight. I had to like sit in a chair, and that's how you really know that you're old. Sitting in a chair in front of the screen reading all the tiny text.
We should do another episode sometime where we just talk about Disco Elysium, because I'd love to.
Man, what a game.
It is the only game with writing that is not embarrassing. Like genuinely the only game I've played where like a lot of games have writing that's like fun in the context of a game and like good in the context of a game, but it's the only one. And I said this when I applied for a job with the company that made it.
Oh, okay.
This is the only.
Didn't they? I didn't mean to cut you off, but didn't they break up?
They did. Yes. They did. They completely exploded. Thank God they weren't interested in working with me, because like it's a shit show.
You were like, I will uproot my life. I will move.
Yeah. This was like right before that happened. Like it probably. Because this wasn't like anything special. This was like everybody in the universe was applying to work with them because the word went out. But I probably, thinking back to the timing, they were probably hiring people specifically because they were in the process of everyone hating each other and leaving. But I do think it is the only game I've played with writing I would not be embarrassed to see in a book.
Yeah.
Like it's actually like pretty much there. And then like, so don't ever learn anything about the people who did it is my strong advice to you.
Honestly, unfortunately, true for most media. Most media. Which
don't learn a damn thing.
Don't learn anything. Even, in wrestling or whatever, I'll put my fingers in my ears a little bit. I'm like, too much information. I don't need to know this stuff. I need to keep a pure little angel brain, smooth brain.
Yes. Wrestling is the one. So for the listener, you and I know each other primarily in the context of wrestling. This is the longest we've ever talked without either of us saying something a little bit extremely horny about a shirtless person fighting another shirtless person.
Yeah.
Professionally.
Or we did, and Mike just cut it all out, so you won't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But wrestling is the one where I give everybody by far the most latitude, because the only way you can possibly be a professional wrestler is to be stupid enough to see what they do and think, me next. Yeah. I want to be the next person who falls on his head.
That looks like that hurts. Let's do it. Let's go. Like, I can't. There's no part of me. Actually, so it kind of reminds me a little bit. I was thinking about this podcast and what we were going to talk about. And I got a couple of things I kind of want to talk about. But I was talking to my friend, and so she was asking what's the podcast about. I'm like, well, it's about books and reading. And I was like, honestly, I feel like I haven't done a lot of reading lately because I've been kind of in a rut. But I realized I was like looking back at my Goodreads, and everything that I have sort of been reading recently has been about like white men getting themselves into situations that I myself would never get it. Oh, they're going to the top of Everest. I'm watching documentaries about that Titanic submersible. I read all of the, I read like Into Thin Air about like the Everest, the John Krakauer, right? And then he did Into the Wild, which I loved. I mean, I love all of them, right? But I'm like, wouldn't be me in Alaska.
No.
Couldn't be me. I read, oh man, I'm absolutely blanking on his name. I should have it pulled up. But the writer of Killers of the Flower Moon, he did like The Lost City of Z and The Wager. Have you heard about The Wager?
I have not heard about The Wager.
The Wager is about this exploration. It's all colonialism, right? That's the backbone of every single one of these books, right? It's just all of these like predominantly white people being like, I see that you have that and I will conquer it because it makes me feel like I am in charge of the world and I am like closer to God because I'm chosen by him. And the lesson of that every time is, no, you're not, and you need to not be here. But the wager is absolutely insane because it's basically during this nautical race between all of these different countries when they have the big warships and all this stuff. And it's all about them going under the tip of South America to try to go up to China to like wage war and stuff like that. And so they have and it's just it's a true story about this mutiny that happens on this ship. Of course, it's also like, I don't know, did you read The Terror or like see The Terror or anything? The show?
I did read The Terror.
I haven't read it. I watched the show.
Terror.
I really want to read the book actually because again, white men getting into situations. The fact that that captain had a horrible time and like had a cannibalism go round one and then got back on a ship years later to do it all again is insane. But the wager is about basically these same sorts of men, scurvy, bodies falling apart, starving, mutiny. They shipwreck, there's a mutiny, and then at some point they're all living on this island for like a year and a half, 2 years, and then they finally like have a mutiny within the group. People die, this whole thing, and then a group of people actually make a ship and like sail back to Britain, and so they show up and they are like heralded as heroes, right? And this is all like in the book cover, so I'm not really spoiling anything.
Yeah.
And then like, and they're like, we're the survivors of this ship that went disappeared, and everyone in Britain is like, oh my god, our brave men, how amazing. And then like 9 months later, like a little seaboat shows up and it's got the rest of the crew on it, and they're like, actually, those guys are mutinied and they abandoned us and they tried to kill us. And so it's all about the like fallout and the legal ramifications of like of all this and like unpacking it and stuff like that. It's a hoot. I absolutely like want to stop strangers on the street. And if anyone's listening to this and is looking for another book about people getting into situations, or they love The Terror, I would absolutely recommend The Wage. Apparently, Scorsese's going to make it into a movie, which we'll see. I don't know. But I would love to see it, I think. And also, apparently, Leonardo DiCaprio signed on, so I'm sure that he will cast himself as, like, the 19-year-old lead, so.
Or the guy who gets eaten.
Yeah.
Does someone get eaten?
I'm trying to remember. I think there is a bit of cannibalism, I believe, on the island.
Good.
Yeah.
I feel like that's an important element in that genre.
Yeah.
That's a fun thing to hear about, partly because like something I've been thinking about as I sort of spin this podcast up is like my own reading habits and deficiencies and like where I have blind spots. And I feel like there's two big ones, one of which I'm like slowly learning to cover, and the other of which I'm like, I don't know that I'll ever even try. So like the thing that I like never read is nonfiction.
Oh, interesting.
I like never, except for history. For some reason, history for me is in a different category. And that one, what you're saying is, of course, a historical event, but like it sounds more like it's about individuals rather than like, structural change over time, right? Which like
I was going to say, the thing I do like about these, I looked it up, David Gran is his name.
Okay, yeah.
Who wrote all these, is that, the amount of research that this goes into each one of these, I find just incredible. I mean, you just have the visual of this guy and his assistants like poring over all documents, the amount that they're pulling it together. But he is able to write each one of these. Like Killers of the Flower Moon is very much almost written like a In Cold Blood kind of style, right? Like very true crime. It's about the formation of the FBI too, but it's really about like how horrible, we treated all of these populations. Lost City of Z is very much almost like an old adventure novel. The Wager is written almost like an adventure novel, but it is, I appreciate at least that like his perspective writing these is that these like, they're fascinating times and things that have happened, but obviously like the people who have done these things are incorrect, and like this is like a racist colonization over and over and over again, and the way that they treat these other people around them is why they end up in these situations, right? Is because of, as always, the hubris. But yeah, I don't know why it's like a comfort read sometimes when I don't have, like, sometimes I feel like I don't have the attention span for fiction, and so I read about people getting stuck in caves or whatever. I don't know why that is. But again, maybe just because it couldn't be me, because I'm scared.
It won't be. You're not gonna.
No.
So yeah, and that's the other like weird blind spot that I have that I am starting to like maybe get over is like I have this weird thing about not wanting to read about like just really awful stuff happening.
Yeah.
Like I started reading Wuthering Heights after a conversation that
Yeah.
you participated in.
Oh yeah, what are you thinking?
Well, like, so I finished it recently. I listened to it as an audiobook, which was helpful for me because I tend to do that when I have a piece of writing where the prose is like not totally gripping to me, like it doesn't quite move at the pace I want it to or whatever. And I suspected this would be one of those. So I would listen to it as I was like riding my bike into work, or as I'm kind of wandering from place to place, or in the gym. I don't like to listen to like exciting pump up music, because then I feel like I need to be lifting the weights to the
beat
pace of the music or something. It really stresses me out. So I'll listen to Wuthering Heights. And the thing that really struck me with it is like how even I think like 4 or 5 years ago, or even like 2 years ago, maybe, I don't know that I would have been able to enjoy it, because it is this story of people just acting like maniacs
Yeah.
for no discernible reason. And I mean, also they killed the character that I enjoyed most, my favorite maniac, upsettingly early. I did not know going in that I was going to lose Catherine so soon, and I was upset about that.
Yeah, she's great. And well, I mean, in the way that they're great characters and horrible to be around.
Yeah. The
Horrible.
moment where, I don't know if you would remember this specifically, but like there's a moment where she's just done some of like her most obnoxious misbehaviors, and she's about to do some more of her most obnoxious misbehaviors. And she says in all earnestness to a person that she's talking to, "I am an angel." And I was like, yes.
Yeah. Well, so that's also I am thrilled to see this new adaptation that's coming out. That what's her name? Emerald. Oh, I'm so bad at names. Farrell, Emerald. She did Saltburn and A Promising Young Woman.
Okay.
So she's got a movie. She's got a film version of it coming out. But she cast. This is sort of the discourse around this movie. Is that one? A lot of people think that Heathcliff should be played by a person of color, which I can absolutely see because of the way that he's sort of presented in the text and like the differences.
It's confusing in that regard.
Like, it's not,
I don't know if that's a good idea or not.
I don't know, but it's sort of one of these things that people always talk about, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't read it in recent enough to remember if there's like direct lines about it in the text and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But also, it's got, what's her name? Oh my God, I'm blanking today. Who plays Margot Robbie? Okay, so Jacob Elordi and Margot Robbie, right? They're old. Like Jacob Elordi's a little bit younger, but like she's not. I'm not trying to be like ageist or anything like that, because Margot Robbie is one of the most stunningly beautiful people in the entire world. But like if Kathy's like 18 or like 17, you can kind of buy why they're insane, because like a 17 or an 18-year-old being like, I'm an angel, like you're like, okay sweetie, like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I'll let you stay out another hour past curfew, like whatever. But I'm so, all that to say, I'm genuinely like very excited about this adaptation because it looks crazy. It looks absolutely like balls to the wall, going for it. I read a review a little bit that like had I think it premiered at Venice or something, and like people were hating it, and I'm like clapping my hands together a little bit, because either it's going to be wonderful or like awful, but I think it's going to be like really interesting, and I'm excited to see these characters. But and I'm ready to be convinced by the casting, because I enjoy both of them very much. But I do think that like they maybe are a little bit old, at least for the beginning part before she passes away, because they are supposed to be like horny and insane for each other. But I mean, yeah we'll see.
The other, like, really, the weird thing for me that, like, I guess this is kind of what people talk about with the book, and I'd heard people talk about it for forever, and this is like a Bronte sisters thing as well, but the fact that Heathcliff, who is, like, my only exposure to him has been through popular culture, right?
Yeah.
It's been through, like, book covers that position him as, you know, the romantic lead. And instead he's a supervillain.
Awful.
He doesn't do anything romantic or good or
like he and Kathy are obsessed with each other.
Yeah.
But they are kept apart because of the rules or whatever. And she marries this other guy, and then she dies, and he never forgives her and makes it everybody's problem for like the rest of the book.
And he just sits there and monologues diabolically about how he's going to destroy this person's life. He would kill this other person if it were like a different time. He has no problems just saying dead on to people, "You're nothing to me, and I'm going to destroy you, and I hate you." He's wrecking his own kid's life just relentlessly. And that is most of the book, actually, is just this horrible man tormenting everybody around him for no discernible reason. And I knew that, like, the Bronte sisters are supposed to be famously problematically into these awful men that they treat as kind of heroes.
I do love a Mr. Rochester. Oh, I do. Oh,
right.
Sitting in his Thornfield Hall feeling bad for himself. Oh my God, Jane Eyre. I love him. Oh, he's
well. See, this is the thing, because I knew this type through Jane Eyre.
Yeah.
I read Jane Eyre in college. I was shocked by how much I enjoyed it, but I did spend the entire book wanting to kill him. And he
sucks, but I after it I do say, like, affectionate. I have to say with Mr. Rochester.
Yes.
You know?
No, this is the thing.
There's a fine line.
That he was about as bad as it could get.
Yeah.
And, like, this is so much worse. There was no point of comparison. The idea that these are even in the same universe was bizarre to me.
Yeah. No, Heathcliff he sucks. Period. But mostly I was surprised when I read Wuthering Heights how much I enjoyed it, even though everyone in it is miserable. It's like a really strong cup of bourbon or something, you know, like you have to just like enjoy it as its own sort of thing, and it's going to burn a bit going down. But actually this, you know, speaking of, one of the other things that I was thinking about talking about is because, again, I haven't read a whole bunch recently, but I find that I do most of my reading when I'm traveling and I'm like trapped on an airplane. And because there's also this new movie of Frankenstein coming out, I reread Frankenstein. Have you read Frankenstein? What a banger.
I have. I've read it a couple times because I've been in various college classes where it was it fit the theme.
Yeah.
So I don't remember how many times I've read it now, but I found that I like it more than I think I do every single time I go back through it.
I remember reading it for the first time and getting my little mind blown, right? The first time that you read Frankenstein and read the monologues and the dialogue from the monster to Frankenstein, and you realize that, like, the pop culture version of this character that you have grown up with and it like taken inside your brain is so opposite of what he actually is in the book, and that it's so much deeper and darker and sadder. Like, the book is so fucking sad because, like, Wuthering Heights is also miserable, and Frankenstein is miserable, right? He's miserable. He spends the entire time getting fevers and passing out for months and, like, recuperating in bed because of the horrors that he's done and that he will not deal with. Everyone in his family just, like, dies one by one by one. But I read it and I went down a big, actually, wormhole about it because I saw other people talking about it, because I didn't realize that there's sort of two really well-known versions of Frankenstein. There's like three versions, I think, but there's two that everyone talks about. There's the original, which is the 1818 version that she published. Mm-hmm. And then there's the revised version, which I think came out in 1830s at some point. And apparently the 1830s version, one, made it a little less incesty, from what I understand.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's like not actually his cousin. It's, a foundling that the family found and raised as his cousin, but they're not actually related.
The Pornhub exemption.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, like I don't. And then apparently, from what I was reading, she did a lot of revising later in her life, Mary Shelley, after she'd like suffered all of this loss. And so, like, Frankenstein, the scientist's motivations change a little bit, like his decision to make this creature in the original version is apparently much more like he knows it's not good, but he's driven by his own ambition. And in the later versions, it's like almost as if a dark power has sort of forced him to do this thing, and then he's like a little bit more innocent, I think, in the later versions. So I heard about this and I was like, wait a minute. So wait, which version did I read? Because I read like a weird PDF downloaded thing that was like, I think it was missing chapters at some point. So I actually just ordered, and I put it here. I don't know if you can see, and people obviously at home, but this is like the annotated version of Frankenstein obviously by Mary Shelley. And then it's got a forward and notes by Leslie Klinger. And so apparently it has both of the 1818 and the 1830s version next to each other, and it like compares the differences that she made, and allegedly like a little bit Percy Shelley, but not too much, and like how her viewpoint on life and everything like affected it. But speaking about like gothic romantic books or whatever with shitty men in them, oh boy, Frankenstein is in the dirt. He sucks. He sucks so bad.
That's a beautiful addition. And
and also, I'm sorry to everyone at home, but like it's got pictures and like medical diagrams and like all this stuff. So anyway, I think they do a whole bunch of different books too. But anyway, I picked this up and I've been reading this because they also have a biography of her at the beginning. And she had a crazy life that's worth reading about because she's nuts. So, and that's the most affectionate way that I'm saying that too. So I feel reignited a little bit by rereading Frankenstein, which is fun.
Yeah, I think I knew that there had been some revisions, but I didn't quite know the extent of it. I'm assuming I read the final version, or what she considered the final version, but of course they also like changed the name, right? So
yeah, it was like the modern,
we kind of do what we want.
The modern Prometheus, and then it got changed to Frankenstein, and yeah.
But that's kind of comforting to think about her revising it, because I will say, as a writer, one of the most upsetting, like the true horror of Frankenstein is not the encounter with death, but the idea that she wrote it in like 2 months as part of a dare, like
as
a contest with somebody.
19-year-old? Yeah.
Yes.
Like
infuriating.
Shut up, Mary Shelley. Sorry that you were a genius. Like, oh, God damn it. Yeah. Some of us haven't cleaned their apartment today, so whatever. Shut up. Whatever.
But you talked about having a sort of being in a bit of a reading rut, and this is one of the things that I like to ask people about, is like how their relationship with reading has changed over time. I'll give like a real quick summary of like my last few years with it. So like when I was this is like my late 20s, I was like having a lot of trouble with what I would later figure out was sleep deprivation, because I needed a CPAP, because apparently if I sleep without one, I wake up literally like 100 times a minute or something crazy. Like I don't, or it's 100 times an hour or something. It was a crazy thing. I did the sleep study, and I told them, like, I don't know if I'm like going to sleep or not. Like, am I doing this right? And they're like, no, you went to sleep. It's just you're doing a horrible job. And actually, we're done with the sleep study. We just want you to put this on, and this is your life
up and
now.
It's weird that they're all crying. Yeah, like
the beauty of my ability to live this way for so long. But so like for years, I was like the most depressed I've ever been for unrelated reasons. I wasn't sleeping, and every time I sat down with a book, I would like start to fall asleep after like a few pages. It was really hard for me to finish anything. I had to be upright. I couldn't like be reclined or even comfortable if I wanted to stay conscious. And so I felt like I was the worst reader on earth, and it was just miserable. And then I started sleeping again, and things got a lot better. And then the main problem I had was the neuroses that I deal with in terms of if I start reading a book, I really struggle with not finishing it.
Yeah.
And so
Same.
I would start something that I didn't love, because I'm picky and I don't love most things. And then I would spend like 6 months like not reading hardly anything else, because I'm not finishing this one book that I feel terrible about. And so finally I got into what is kind of my modern strategy of reading. The current approach in this era of Mike is I have like 14, I don't even know how many books I have going right now. I have like 24 that technically are like in the queue in my head. I started reading at some point. Every now and then I pick one up, and then I just like, I keep going until I finish with one of them at some point. Like it just happens kind of magically. And I have audiobooks I'm listening to. I have ebooks. I have physical books. So no matter where I am, there's like something that I can read that is like keeping me engaged with it and keeping me in the habit. But like, it was literally like a decade of shame and like guilt and frustration that I felt like I wasn't doing it right, and I wasn't reading nearly as much as I wanted to. And I would think like, when I'm dead, I'm going to be so mad at myself for how few books I read before I died.
Well, and also like you see everyone else's Goodreads challenges at the end of the year, and they're like, wow, I did a really bad job. I only read 100 books this year. And I'm like, when? How? I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah.
So I was obviously like a huge reader as a kid, and then I think very familiar for a lot of people. School kind of burns it out of you, right? Like I had to read Jane Eyre 3 times in high school within 4 years.
Wow.
And every time I'd be like, I love, as an adult, I freaking love Jane Eyre. It's one of my favorite books. But when you're that age and they're like, and we're going to read Jane Eyre, and you're like, we read Jane Eyre. I read it last year and the year before in English class. And they say, well, maybe you'll get something new out of it this time. And you're like, I am being punished. Like, I don't want to read this again. So, and also because my like brothers, I went to an all girls Catholic school, and my brothers were coming home and they were like, oh, sick. Yeah, we got to read this book called like Ender's Game. And I'm like, you got to read a book about like a spaceship? And I'm reading fucking Jane Eyre for the third. I'm reading The Awakening. I'm reading like these books that like as an adult, I'm reading Wuthering Heights or whatever. Books that like as an adult you appreciate more. But as a teen, you're like, why am I not getting to read the fun? I'm not having fun. I'm being like forced to do this. And so I definitely, like in college and stuff, I took art classes, which basically just like ate up my life. So I ended up taking English classes for fun, almost to make me read. And I got an English minor, like sort of accidentally, because I did like a bunch of like children's literature courses and stuff like that, which was wonderful because it was the like analytical stuff that I found really interesting, but also like it's not that hard to read Peter Pan, right? It's like not that, like that kind of stuff. And then unfortunately, the way that my attention span tends to work, and I feel this way about like most hobbies that I have, is like when I'm doing the thing, I kind of want to only be doing that thing. So if I'm reading a book, I'm usually going to be like in my spare time where in my brain says it's open hobby time, I'm going to be doing that thing until it's like sleep. And that's unfortunate. Like, so in my dream world, I am reading a book like through a weekend. I am like reading it into the night, and then I'm waking up and I'm continuing to like lie in bed and read. That is like not, unfortunately, how the world works under capitalism or whatever, right? Like that's just like you have to get groceries, and you have to like answer the phone, and you have to clean your apartment, and you have to do laundry and like all this kind of stuff. So I do have a lot of issues these days, especially sort of a similar thing where everyone's like, just read a few chapters or read a few pages before bed. And I'm like, I can only read a few pages and then I fall asleep because, and so, and then I have like, right now by my bed, I have like 4 unfinished books that I like have gotten a little bit to, and then I've sort of fallen off. So that's also sort of where I get frustrated, is because like I almost like don't want to stop and look at anything else because I'm worried that I'll get distracted and then I won't come back and finish it.
Yeah.
Even if I'm enjoying it. Like I'm reading this book, quote unquote. I haven't looked at it in months, but I've got this author that I actually really love, Leigh Bardugo, who does like she does Ninth House and Hellbent. She did the like Six of Crows series. I love her, and she's got this book called The Familiar, and I'm enjoying the heck out of it, and it's halfway through on my nightstand and I haven't finished it because I just like started doing something else. So I don't know, sometimes I feel like I need to like, that's why I think sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm going on an airplane, I'm trapped, which is kind of interesting. I think like when you were saying you don't like, or you for a long time you didn't like movies, is that sometimes I love movies because I am trapped. Like I am forced to, you're putting me in an airplane, I'm in a box, there's like, I'm in economy, there's no little TV that I can watch or whatever. I'm going to like sit and I'm going to like get into that sort of flow state where you're able to read for like 2 hours or whatever like that and knock out a whole bunch. But I or people are like, wake up early, and I'm like, I love sleep. I'm not gonna.
Wake up early is the funniest fucking advice a person can give.
Do that. I can't do it.
Be a super person. Be better than you are. Be moral. Have a different like biological clock.
Wake up early and read? No, I'm gonna look at phone and feel bad. Like, give me a break. Like,
wake up early, take a walk, do 5 sets in the gym of all your stuff, eat your vegetables, and then read your book.
No, and like it's the same thing with like working out. I love I take like spin classes, right? And I love a group exercise class because I need railroads. I need like parameters. I need like a start and a stop time that I can't do anything else, that I am like locked into whatever the thing is, because whatever I'm doing it, I'm going to be doing it very focused, but that only lasts for so long. And then I'm always like in a rush to get as much of that, like read as much as I can before the feeling is gone or the attention span changes or something like that.
Yeah.
So, which is disappointing.
I think you were the person who revealed to me what spin class is.
Oh,
I don't know if you remember this conversation.
Oh, no.
I think this was you.
Probably because most of my personality outside of the Discord. So
It's mostly spin?
Yeah. I go like 4 or 5 times a week, so it's nuts. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. No, for the longest time, whenever anybody said they did spin class, I knew this couldn't be it, right? Like, it was one of
Did
those
you think
things
it was
where,
like the
I know.
wheel, like the wheel in Sleeping Beauty or something, and like making the thread or like?
That would make so much more sense than what I thought. I would literally picture people hanging out in like a yoga studio or whatever and spinning. And like, I knew that was wrong. And like, I would try to picture like, what are they spinning? Like, they must have an implement. There must be like a weight
Hula
or a
hoop or like.
Exactly. I think there was a long period where I genuinely thought it was definitely hula hoop based core exercises. And like, I think it was you mentioning it where I finally put together like, oh, it's with a bike.
Yeah, that's so
There's
funny.
a bike involved.
Oh, I wish I hadn't ruined that. I wish that you were just like, wow, she's just going 4 to 5 times a week to do hula hoop. Like, that's crazy. Or like a skip it. Like, I'm doing like a skip it from the 90s in a studio with a bunch of people in athleisure. Yeah.
No one realizes that the Skip It is the single best piece of technology for building a core. You get an 8-pack if you do a Skip It.
Like, everything
and,
comes
like,
back
big
around.
calves.
Yeah. Oh my God. Right. Well, don't say big calves or the men will take it over and we'll never see it again. So.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No,
I
it's
didn't.
okay.
I didn't know. Are the men excited about calves now? Is there a trend?
They are so and if there are any men listening to this, your calves are
Probably
beautiful.
not.
But yeah, probably not. Get out of here. No, I'm kidding. But your calves are beautiful. Calf implants are one of the largest plastic surgeries that men get is calf implants.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
And that is strange because I feel like, I don't know if this is just maybe the men in my life are blessed, but I feel like it is weirdly common for you to be talking to a dude and like he's wearing shorts for the first time that you've seen him like ever or like in 10 years or something. And you like glance down and you're like, your calves are huge.
Yeah.
You're not ripped generally, but like whatever you're doing, you
got
have
great calves.
melons for calves.
Exactly. Man, you got melons for calves. They're great. Don't eat. And like, here's the thing. I'm very pro like body modification, plastic surgery, do what makes you feel happy.
Sure.
But your calves are beautiful. Guys out there, you know?
You got to work on other stuff. The calves are not the issue.
Yeah, it's your personality. It's actually the
The
personality.
personality and the butt implants. Those are the two things that you need.
Those are the ones I will shame. Yeah, no, but the calf implant thing is crazy. But yeah, but they would take over Skip It, I think, for sure.
Well, I mean, that would actually be delightful if we could get the men involved in Skip It. I would love to see them in the studio where I every week when I go to the gym, I walk by the studio and I hear the music and it's painfully loud for me in passing. And I know that I am a 39-year-old man going on 60 because I've seriously considered multiple times and almost talked myself into it, writing an email to like whoever's in charge at the university rec center and telling them like, do you have any idea how much hearing damage you're doing to these young people? Like they're all losing huge amounts of they're going to be half deaf when they're old because they went to your class.
I have some friends who at our studio, they wear the little like loop headphones, but I say, no, I must have the music in my head and I will pay for that, unfortunately, at some point. So
Yeah, no, it is. So sometimes it's better not to think about, like with hearing in particular, I feel like there's a lot of moments where I ask myself, like, is this a good choice for me long term? And no. Like if I'm asking that question, the answer is no.
is often no.
Reading on a plane is one of those like fantasies for me that always sounds so beautiful when people talk about it. And I think I've achieved it like one time just because like, well, no, I did do it recently. I took a 16-hour or something flight to South Korea for reasons.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
That.
And I think I did successfully read there because like I had long enough that like by the end of it, it was like my body believed that I lived in a plane. It was like, this is who you are now.
You're home
But
now.
like usually, like I'm just so physically miserable the whole time. It's like everything feels wrong. Like I've only ever read one book well in an airplane that I can remember. And is a friend of mine, Evan Lavender Smith, wrote a book called Avatar. And it's one
I
sentence.
did ask. Oh, okay, I was going to say, is this before or after the movie came out? And
This, I think that he wrote it before and it came out after. It was, yeah, it definitely came out after. And it was one of those things where, yeah, like that's obviously the biggest problem that he had. I don't know why he didn't change the name. I don't know why that's the title. I love the book.
Yeah.
But I don't understand the the title, to be honest. But I only managed to read it because it is literally one sentence and it's about 100 pages, and was like, okay, I can handle this.
That's wild. Is that like the concept? So the concept of the book is that the book is one sentence. It's just like one long run-on sentence.
Yeah, it's this guy is floating midway between, like, there's a point of light behind him, there's a point of light in front of him. He's maybe in space. He doesn't remember how he got there. He's like bitten off his fingernails and spat them out, and they're not like floating next to him. And that's like all that is going on physically in the book, is him floating endlessly in a void, not knowing why. And it's 100 pages. It's one sentence. And it is like, I have pretty avant-garde tastes in general, but I do often struggle with avant-garde fiction because it all ends up kind of being the same thing, I feel like.
Yeah.
It's like usually like somehow the edgiest possible thing you can do with fiction hasn't changed in like 200 years. But I really got into that one to the point where I do buy copies of it for people for Christmas pretty routinely. And I've never heard any of them say, I read it and I loved it. Thank you. Keep doing it. No one ever says thank you for a book on Christmas and means it, but
I know they're like,
I mean, some
homework.
people do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I do it sparingly. It's a treat you're giving yourself as the gift giver, and I try to be honest with myself
And
about that.
I do love giving people books that I have read that I think
Yeah.
that they'll like. That I have. You have to give it though with the especially if it's from your own like purchase or collection. I feel like you just have to give it with the expectation that it is no longer your book and you will never see it again. And you have to make that very clear in the giving. Like, you know, with a new book, that's understood too. But like, even like giving people books or whatever, I'm packing up to move next month.
Yeah.
And I have 2 books that I have set aside, and the guilt that I have over these books that a friend gave me that I have not read and just have been on my shelf. And I'm like, I don't think she even remembers that I have them. I don't think she's never asked about them again. But it's not like but I'm like responsible for these things. And there's a part of me that's like, I wish she hadn't given me these books, even though it is like a love language thing to be like, this made me think of you. I think you will love it. But also, I release you from the responsibility.
Yes.
But I feel I'm looking at them right now. I'm emotionally tied. I got to figure out what to do with them. But
the release is so important. It's like lending money. Lending books is the same thing as lending money. You have to do it in the expectation that you are never seeing a dime again. You're never getting it back, and you're not going to bring it up. And you're going to try not to make the other person feel bad about it so that they bring it up. Like it disappears the second it leaves your hand.
Yeah. Gone. Yeah. Like a beautiful dream. Actually, speaking of too, you were talking about books that sort of play with the form. And I was thinking about, it just reminded me of a book that I loved this book. And I was curious if you've seen it or read it, I guess, seen it. And it's not a movie. That's insane. Have you read Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders?
No, I've read a fair amount of his, and that one has been on my list to get to someday since it came out. But it was one of those where I had a lot of friends who read it, and there were a lot of opinions. There were a lot of strong opinions about it, and I felt like I had to wait until everyone else calmed down before I could read it and see it myself. You know what I mean? Like, I would be too busy fighting with my friends in my head about it to actually read it.
Yes. Honestly, much like me and K-pop Demon Hunters, which I don't know if you've seen, fucking slaps.
No.
I watched it like last week. And I was like, guys, this music's good. And everybody was like, yeah, dingus. Anyway, but Lincoln in the Bardo was one of those books that I gave to people. And I was like, and it was with the like, I was like, I loved this book. And I know that people had very strong opinions about it. I think it's one of those books that I've never reread. I read it at a very specific time. It was like, as we were coming out of lockdown, and I had a lot of unprocessed grief, I think, about a lot of different things happening. And sometimes you just read a book that has nothing to do with specifically anything that is happening in your life, you know, like I can't say that I directly related to anything sort of happening within it, but sometimes I felt like it had like unscrewed a bolt in my heart. Like I loved it so much. I was so moved by it. And it's so funny because I remember talking about it with somebody, and I was like, I read this book, Lincoln in the Bardo, and I loved it. And they were like, that's the worst book I've ever read. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, like,
Yes.
oh, no, I didn't say anything. It's fine. You know, and you're just like, and I'll never have an opinion about anything again, and I'll never bring it up, and it's totally fine. But you have to, it's like, part of it is you're just like, you have to just let people think it's the worst book that they've ever read. At the time that I read it, it's the best book I ever read, you know? And, and it is also so stylistically different from what I had been reading because it is so like stream of consciousness, the punctuation, it's hard to tell who's talking because it's not in a normal format. Chapters of it are pieced together from like historical documents that still read as like a narrative. So trying to explain it or like as the hook to people is kind of difficult for any of the readers who don't know what I'm talking about. It literally is about like the time period after Abraham Lincoln's son passes away. And allegedly it is like of historical record that he went and visited the body sort of while it was like in the grave site and stuff. And he would like go sit with his son's body. And so it's sort of about his person like dealing with the grief, and there's like ghosts and supernatural and spiritual and all this stuff. It's wild. Like the book itself is like crazy. But sometimes you read a crazy book at like the right time, and then somebody else says it's the worst book that they've ever read, and you're like, okay, but I think it fixed me. So
yes.
I don't know.
Well, and those were the conversations that I heard. That was the exact sort of exchange that I would bump into, where somebody would say that it was beautiful and profound, and then someone else would like bring that to the group chat and be like, "Can you believe this buffoon loved Lincoln in the Bardo?"
I loved it.
And then this other person would be like, "I loved Lincoln in the Bardo, you asshole!" And like. It was so stressful.
It's so funny. And I will just say that I read some of George Saunders' short stories, but I don't have a long history with him. And so a lot of people I know who didn't like it had really loved his other stuff. So I think maybe it helps that I came into it pretty new, not knowing anything about him as a writer before.
People bring a lot of baggage to reading him, I feel, partly because sort of his signature works for a long time were a fairly strong taste, they were a little bit vinegar, and they were like sort of the same vinegar over and over again. And like he has a reputation for that like you read some of his most recent stuff and you're like, I don't understand why his reputation is that he only does like satirical stories about corporate parks and like that are also capitalist hellscapes or whatever. And then you like see some of the older stuff and it's like, oh, that's because that was what he was doing. And so there were a lot of people that like got sick of that and rebelled against it and decided that he sucked and like I think never let go of that. And then there are other people that like if you've been with him from the beginning and you read those things that were kind of the same.
If you're a real
thing,
Sond head,
yes. You have a sickness that like you're on board. You're gonna be there forever. And so like he's one of those people that I definitely feel like brings out the derangement. And I feel like it is so important. Another skill similar to the skill of lending the book and letting it go. A related skill is when someone comes up to you and like sees you're reading something and you are like, I'm about to put this down. I hate this. And they're like, I love that book. That's my favorite book. Your duty is to not shit on it.
Yes.
And it's so hard to resist that though, because I'm a jerk.
My old coworker told me all about how much she loved 50 Shades of Grey. And I said, oh, great. What do you like about it? Like, absolutely. Also, I think part of the skill too is sometimes you just have to accept that you might have bad taste. And I don't know that that's what I would categorize Lincoln in the Bardo as, because I think, again, that it was beautiful and really genuinely
I think it's probably
wonderful.
Good.
But, like, I also do think that it's okay to, I don't know, like, it's okay that you love something and somebody else hates something. And that's, and again, sometimes they do hate it for a stupid reason, but also sometimes that's enough, But yeah, I would be really curious if you read it to hear what you said, because maybe you'd be like, I hate it. But yeah, you'd have to lie. Everybody, you just have to lie. And then you can get out of the conversation and move on. But don't tell somebody, unless you like are actually interested in like having a debate about it. And the other person is obviously also interested in talking about the pros and the cons. But if somebody is just telling you like how much they loved this book and it means to them, don't shit on it. I do think that's shit.
Yeah, like if you have that relationship with a person, and I didn't used to know that. Like this is middle-aged Mike talking to 20-something Mike. Like I didn't used to know when I had that relationship with a person or not. And so if a person said that they liked something that I thought was bad, I felt absolutely duty bound to be like, you moron. This sucks. I can't believe that you like this. And like I want to think that it wasn't malicious, but I did do it.
I think that, and if people ever get into a situation where they don't know how to do it, you just say, I'm having trouble getting into it. What do you like about it? Like ask the other person a question about what it is that appeals to them. And maybe it is like, I don't know, I read it on an airplane and it held my attention, or it made me laugh or whatever. But like, you don't have to like say that you think it sucks, but sometimes I do think it is interesting why somebody does enjoy a thing that you don't enjoy, because we're all coming at everything from a different point of view, right? Like a different perspective. Again, like let's talk about Lincoln and the Bardo. I read Lincoln and the Bardo at a very specific time in my life, and it deeply affected me. I don't know that if I had come to it now, it would be the same book, you know? And sometimes, again, you can ask that person why this isn't working for me, why, and they will explain more, and then you can feel deep in your heart that you are correct and that you have good taste and they have bad taste. So otherwise, you are just getting more information to set your mind.
Yeah, I really like, I try and keep a little list for myself of like conversational moves that will make conversation more enjoyable, but also like make me less hateful to be around as a person. And like one example that I think about a lot is a friend of mine, like 10 years ago or something, when I said something really strident at like a restaurant that served burritos that had like Indian curry inside. I said my really strident opinion that I don't really remember well enough to replicate for you now, and probably would denounce. Probably was embarrassing. And he just said very calmly, "Say more about that."
Oh,
and
no.
I was, well, I mean, like that can be a trap, but like he was saying it in like a really friendly, supportive, like you seem to feel strongly about this. Go a little further with, I'm not really understanding what you're getting at right now. Can you say a little bit more? And ever since then, I try to remember that I have that option in conversations. Just say more about that.
Yeah. And especially, that's a really good clue, because for maybe anyone who listens to those, I love to yap. And unfortunately, part of the pros and cons of yapping is that sometimes you just say shit, and you're just saying something that you think is going to like be funny or pop somebody or whatever. And then there's like a follow-up question and you're like, I don't actually think that. I just thought it was like a funny hot take, but then sometimes you're like, actually, I do think this is I am actually thinking deep into my soul, and I do think it says something about you if you don't return a shopping cart at the store, Like,
it absolutely does. It absolutely does. Fuck those people. Those people need to find Christ. And I'm not Christian, but they need to be.
Christ is putting his shopping carts back. It's better for the cars. It's better for the workers. It's better for the organization. It makes a less messy store. Like, I have 2 shopping cart dings in both sides of my car that I, a cheapskate, am not paying to get out. But every time I see them, I say, that wasn't me. That wasn't me. That wasn't my shopping cart. Drives me nuts.
It's very important.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about those shopping carts now. And also Jesus, he would be returning it with the quarters at Aldi,
Yeah. I want to go back to this idea of being in a reading rut and just to ask you, like, what do you do when you want to get out of one of those? Like, how do you escape that rut?
Well, honestly, part of it was me reading Frankenstein again, is that I remembered that I read it and I loved it. And so sometimes I just need to, and it had been long enough that rereading it was like a new experience. And so a lot of times what I do is I reread something that I love. I recommended that book series to you, Captive Prince, I think.
Yeah.
And like I read that like every couple of years. And I find it's something that like I know that I love, that makes me really happy, that just for like it almost like refires the neurons in my brain where I'm basically like relaying down that runway, and then I can sort of like, I don't have to reread the whole trilogy or whatever, but like or I'll pick up Dune or something because I love Dune. Or in the Interview with the Vampire, I have an old copy and I remember growing up and I would just open it to a random page and start reading. And so it almost just like gets those wheels going a little bit, and then I can like sort of jump to something else, because like even rereading Frankenstein and getting really excited about this annotated version I got, it makes me want to like dig deeper into sort of more books similar. And like, honestly, like more, they mentioned a biography of Mary Shelley. And I was like, just from reading this, she's so much more interesting than I remembered. And it makes me want to like dig more into her. And so I might pick that up next. So just sort of like seeing what pings and then jumping off from there. But other than that, my friend got me into audiobooks. And the Libby app and everything like that. So I've been trying to use that a bit, but I find that for that, like that's when I'm on, long drives and things like that, because if I'm just tootling around, usually I'm listening to podcasts that are like an hour and a half, something like that. So I have a little bit of trouble, but I have to do some big long drives in the Southeast where I live sometimes to see family, and that's kind of perfect. But even with those, unfortunately, the kind of stuff that I'm listening to is like The Girl in the Paris Apartment, or like The Murder Most Foul. It's like
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you the plots of some of those books. They're fluff. They're just
Yeah.
like, and I'm rolling my eyes because I'm like, I read one recently where like halfway through the book, I was like, this actually ties back to something, is that my friend, who, if she listens to this, Alyssa, I'm so sorry. She recommended like 2 books to me in a row, and I read them, and she asked me how I liked them, and I was like, I hated them. I was like, I thought they were so terrible, and she's like, I'm not recommending books to you anymore. I know one of them was like The Silent Patient, and then one of them, I can't remember what the other, it was like a murder mystery or something, and I just like did not vibe. And I love like I love trashy books, I love like murder mysteries. I love that kind of stuff, but I'm an idiot. And if I can figure out what's going on, one of them, I was like, this girl's dead. She's dead the whole time. Like, she's a ghost. And everyone's like, every conversation that she's in, nobody's saying anything directly to her. And then at the end,
no.
they're like, you've been dead the whole time. And I'm like, I fucking know. Just get me out of here. Like, I'm so that was a party foul on my part, where she literally was like, I can't recommend books to you anymore. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I was a bad friend. So, and that's on me. And I always want people to recommend books to me. So I was not a safe space for those recommendations.
Right.
And I should have asked her more about why she liked them. So that's what I should.
But you're listening and learning.
Yeah.
You're putting out your notes app apology, and you're going to do better from now on. That is hard when you know a twist through the whole thing. It can be totally fine, because like a really good, like ideally a writing professor in a creative writing class, like I think this was back in undergrad, gave a piece of advice for writing things with twists that was so perfect that it's now my heuristic for the whole thing, which is, if you need it, you can't have it.
Oh, interesting.
If the twist is necessary to the success of the story, and like, I mean, this is kind of a genre thing, because like there are like mysteries are more twist oriented, right? Like there are some things where like you need a reveal to work, but like, I mean, that's like, if you need the girl to have been dead the whole time for the book to be something that is interesting in retrospect, like, it should have been interesting enough the whole way through.
The whole way through. And it wasn't. It was just the whole book was, and the whole thing was and then there were none knockoff. Like the whole thing. And so I was reading it going, why am I not just reading and then there were none? Like a classic, right? Like and the murder didn't make sense. The motivation of the murderer was nonsense. Like, and so the whole thing was obviously built around this idea of like, what if the protagonist is dead the whole time? And then it turns out that all this stuff is happening because of whatever. And then they wrote back from there, but it didn't hold up without it. So I think that's absolutely one of those things where like, as soon as you take the twist away, the scaffolding falls apart.
Yes. And again, Alyssa, we're sorry. We've both done this now to you, and we're going to try to be better next time. The odds that in the next episode we'll insult something that you read, very low. Blorb won't even be here.
She has great taste. She has great taste. There was just these 2 books in a row that did not hit for me personally, and it's not her fault. It was me.
Yeah. Audiobooks have been a big part of how I've been keeping myself out of a rut for the last few years. And it has been, I had to learn how to read audiobooks. That was actually like, for a long time, they were even, it was a sleep thing again. I find being read to like the most relaxing, soothing thing on the planet.
Interesting.
You know, like that's like how I started reading in the first place. It was like my parents reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and those books to me as a kid. And so like, to me, when someone reads to me, there's just a part of me that immediately is like, well, now it's bedtime. Why else would this be happening? And it took me, the way that I finally learned to like exist in the right space where like I'm paying enough attention that I know what's going on, but I'm also kind of existing in the world enough that I'm not like, again, going unconscious.
Yeah.
Do you know the game Vampire Survivors?
No, but it sounds incredible.
It's this brainless, wonderful game where you're a tiny little guy that looks like he was drawn in MS Paint.
Yeah.
And you're surrounded by like zombies and vampires. Actually, there are no vampires in the game, even though it's called Vampire Survivors. But they're little monsters drawn in MS Paint too, and they're coming at you from all sides, and your guy just spits out bullets and sickles and axes and knives and stuff, and you don't have to press any buttons except to move your guy around. You're literally just wiggling your guy around on the screen.
Like asteroid, whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Like,
and he's just shooting bullets in every direction, and it's wonderfully brain dead. And I learned how to listen to audiobooks playing that game, because that game kept my brain just engaged enough that I would stay awake while I was listening to the story. And so now I have this whole other avenue for, again, reading stuff where, like, I tend to use it to read things where, like, you mentioned Dune. You love Dune.
Yeah.
Dune, the prose is a little challenging for me.
Yeah.
It like takes a little too much time to do what it's doing. And when the characters start talking about their, like, I think that he's thinking this, but he knows that I think that he's thinking this, and therefore he's thinking that I'm thinking this.
I love that stuff. The whole thing where it's like Lady Jessica twitches her eyebrow and then waves cast, like, and everyone, like, any of that, like, very interior political stuff.
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff. But I absolutely agree. Yeah, it's a little bit. I reread it actually a few years ago before the first of the new movies came out. And it was so interesting to me to read it because the prose is so different than I remembered, even though I grew up reading it multiple times, because I do feel like it is, and maybe it's just the way that I'm used to reading a lot of books these days. It is so, like, free-flowing, third-person, omniscient narration that, in a way that I have not run into regularly. I'm so used to, like, and a lot of it's these murder mystery books, right? A chapter is a point of view. Like, it's very like George R. R. Martin, right? A new character and a new chapter, and you're locked into that point of view. And in Dune, they're just like, it's vibes, baby. I'm inside all these people's brains, and I'm gonna and like, it's not, the camera is not behind one character's head. The character is the camera is locked onto the ceiling, and it sees everything that's going on. And it was a little bit of a mindfuck for me to go back and read it and have to, like, get used to that style again, because it really kind of threw me off. Where I was like, wait. There really isn't, like, an unreliable narrator in it, and I love an unreliable narrator, because the point of view in Dune has to see inside everybody's brains at all the time, so that you can see all these little, like, minuscule facial expressions that are happening that are changing the course of politics or whatever.
That's an interesting. One of the sad things about listening to audiobooks is, like, often you do miss some of the finer details of, like, how the prose functions and stuff, because that's, like, part of what I'm going to it for is, like, to let it wash over me and not have to pay close attention if it doesn't totally vibe with me. But, like,
circling back around a little bit to where we had that discussion about Gothic literature and stuff, where you were asking for recommendations, I guess. Did I talk about Rebecca? Have you read Rebecca?
I think
Daphne
maybe
du Maurier.
You mentioned it.
I might have mentioned it.
I don't think we talked about it.
Have you read it?
No.
Okay. If you're open to it, and again, if the book speaks to you at the right time, speaking about favorite books, and again, if you read it and you hate it, I don't want to know. But if you want to read a book about insane people with a locked-in point of view and some, like, real Gothic tropes, you got that House on the Hill, you got The Dead Wife, Mysteries Abound, you've got just somebody with a camera locked so deep in their own brain that can only see out of their eyeballs and is missing so much other stuff in a really delicious way. That one of my favorite experiences of reading a book for the first time was when I read Rebecca in 8th grade and realized what an unreliable narrator was. And I threw the book across the room because I was so used to reading, like, Dragon Riders of Pern or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, which is great. But, like, the stuff that I had been reading up until that point, I had never read anything that made me realize that I had been duped by a book like it wanted me to be duped by. And the thrill of that, I love talking about, like, figuring out twists and stuff. I fucking love getting duped. I love to have a stupid smooth brain and that you pull one over my eyes. I want to have a good time. I want to go on the journey that you're telling me. It's not that hard for me to get duped because a lot of times I am like, I'm here for a good time. Like, I will listen to the story that you want to tell me. But it was fun to read a book that I didn't even realize that there was a whole story going on that I had no idea that I was missing, which is thrilling. And I'm always just chasing that high of reading Rebecca for the first time in 8th grade.
That's a good thing to think about, like the high that you're chasing as far as reading. I have a weird relationship to that because I read, so you mentioned, like, being burnt out on reading because you were kind of having to read stuff as a kid for school. I was homeschooled up until college. And not only was I homeschooled, but I was like practically unschooled.
Interesting.
Which is, the thing where like some people are really ideological and intentional about it. It just kind of was what happened in my family because I like refused to cooperate with assignments. But, the idea where like you just kind of let the kid be interested in what the kid's interested in. They learn things in the order they learn them. And so in some ways I am an idiot as a result. And one of the ways is that I was reading constantly. I loved reading, but I mostly read really bad stuff until like college because no one was making me read good things. So, like the highs that I'm chasing in some ways are like the Three Detectives books series, which is like a second-rate Hardy Boys series, stuff like that. Which like
Encyclopedia
I don't even
Brown.
like them when I look back at them now. Like they're not actually good, but like. And then like the first like really good book for adults that I read might have been The World According to Garp, which I found at the library when I wandered into the adult section, and then I was like 13, and I really, that's an age for encountering that book.
We also had there was a competition in schools, and I'm sorry to come on a podcast and not remember the names of anything, but I got a smooth brain, so that's what it is.
I can't remember the names of anything ever.
And I had handfuls of acetone this morning, just to bring that back to the furniture restoration thing. But they had a competition when you were like in grade school where you would read books and there would be a computer in the back of the classroom, like the old like 90s, 80s, 90s looking computers with the black screen and the green type, right? And you would take a quiz and you would have to like take a quiz. You would say like, I read Frankenstein, and then they would have a quiz and you would sit there and take basically like a book report quiz to make sure that you had actually read it. And the difficulty of the books on this entire, there were like hundreds of books listed. They had different point values. And it is only in the last few years that I've accepted that I'm actually a deeply competitive person.
Yeah.
But I'm only competitive about things that don't matter and are really like, not on a stage. Like I'm not a sports competitive person. Like I'm never going to like go in direct competition with anything, but like a secret competition like this where I was like, oh yeah, sure. I could read like an Encyclopedia Brown book for 3, or I could read Gone with the Wind for 65 points. Well, I'm going to get Gone with the Wind. And that's why I read like Gone with the Wind. And I was reading like all of these so I read so many of these classic books because they were on here and because these like more difficult books had a higher point rating and the person who won got a pizza party. So like, and I was like, and my friend and I were like in direct competition with each other. And so that I am also always chasing the high of coming in first and her coming in second and winning the pizza party and like we would literally sit at the computer as each other and she'd be like, you finished Gone with the Wind? And I'd be like, yeah, how interesting. Like, and then you'd take the whole test to see how much you remembered. And, speaking of people who are terrible, Scarlett O'Hara, good God, run for the money. Mostly affectionate, but what a mess. And yeah, and like, I'm like, I kind of wish that there was like, as an adult, Goodreads isn't the same. Like the little bar going up on my reading challenge a year. It's not the same. I want to read a book and get points, and they don't do that. It's just called being an adult and reading for fun. And it's not working as good. So
the pizza part, that's so powerful. And like, and you've actually you're so good at being on this podcast that you have jumped ahead and done like my final segment for me, because like so I don't know, this podcast doesn't exist yet. This is we're in the period of banking stuff before we go live. So I genuinely don't know if you remember that I told you the title is Library Pizza.
Yeah.
You were party to conversations where I was like, I still, there's a small part of me that thinks I should have called it Book Stink. And Tracy was going to murder me if I did it.
Tracy's great. Tracy's wrong. I loved Book Stink.
It's the subtitle of the podcast.
Library Pizza, Book Stink.
Really? Real ones? No.
Look, I'll make you merch when this podcast blows up. Like, and I'll be like your Tunnel Talk merch person, and I'll make you some Book Stink.
Thank you.
Yeah, our Book Stink heads in the chat go off in the comments and say that you want Book Stink merch.
It would be beautiful to have merchandise that in no way promoted the actual podcast.
That's the best kind.
But so like the reason it's called Library Pizza is the fondness with which I remember the summer reading program where you would
Yeah.
earn the personal pan pizza by reading. And it sounds
Yeah.
like you like the closing segment is traditionally, did you earn a personal pan pizza? And it sounds like you did
Oh,
way
baby.
better than that.
Did I earn the personal pan pizza? I was first in the grade. I was first out of all like 250 students because I am secretly competitive. I did the math on the fewest amount of books that I could read for the most amount of points and climbed the top of that mountain. And also learned to love to read. And like, again, I'm glad I did because a lot of the books that I was reading, like, Watership Down and stuff like that, are the books like appropriate for the age level, but also like books that were like a little bit older than I probably would have read otherwise because I would have just defaulted to like Dragon Riders of Pern because I love dragons and fantasy and stuff like that. And so I really do feel like it pushed me out of my level a little bit. And yeah, it was delicious. I mean, was it good pizza? No, but earning a pizza, the best pizza. Best pizza.
The library, the summer reading program, the way it was implemented where I grew up in Indianapolis, I don't know. My guess is that they had kind of a standard set of practices that was done pretty far and wide in libraries. But like my memory is they did not incentivize reading older than your age because there were categories you would get more points for. But my memory is that chapter books was basically the category that it topped out at, right? It wasn't like chapter books featuring some like really troubling ideas that you're going to spend the rest of your like grappling with.
Yeah.
It wasn't, they weren't trying to get you to read Gone with the Wind. They were trying to get you to read Dragon Riders of Pern. And so like at that age, I did kind of read at my age maybe longer than I should have. Like I think miss out on some of that like pushing and reading these, classic or in any case large books and having to grapple with them as a middle schooler. And I do regret it a little bit. I kind of wish I'd read better stuff early on.
I know, and that's always like that. I know that's always sort of the question of it, right? Like with kids that are getting into reading, where I remember. So when I was reading Jane Eyre 3 times in high school, and I was so mad because the other English class, because I was in the honors English class, and the regular English class got to read this book called Night Jasmine, right? And everybody in our school everybody in those classes was talking about how good Night Jasmine was. And I was so mad that everybody was having such a great time reading this book called Night Jasmine, and I was stuck reading Jane Eyre for the 3rd time, talking about the symbolism of the drawings that Jane shows Mr. Rochester. Like, we've done it. We get it, right? And then as an adult, like it's stuck in my brain, this book, Night Jasmine. I read this book as an adult and it's awful. It's so bad. It's like I don't know if you even know, it's basically like a romance set in New Orleans, which is where I grew up. And so everyone was thrilled to be reading a book set in New Orleans. That's about this woman who falls in love with these 2 brothers and like one of them dies. So she marries the other one or whatever. But it's basically like, I was kind of surprised because I went to a pretty strict school and I was like, they read this? Like they got to read this? Like, but it was bad. But also everybody in those classes was excited to read that book and they loved the book. And so I'm like, so I guess in some ways it was good because they had a positive experience reading. And like, I have a bunch of nephews now and trying to find books, I have like a teenage nephew who just wants to play like Fortnite and stuff, and like Minecraft or whatever. But like my younger one is, the younger ones is 5. And we've been talking a bit about like, the Harry Potter books and stuff. And like, do you, feeling very conflicted now as an adult who does not really want to have anything to do with them. But like those books, I remember being in like junior high when I read those books, when the first 3 were out, and I read the first 3 Harry Potter books in 4 days. Like I went home from school and I just read into the night, and that very cliche, like under the blanket with a flashlight, and just felt like my world expanded. Right. And so like, I just trying to find that stuff that hooks the kids on that feeling without burning them out like I got in high school. Like, I don't know, it's such a balance. And so I do feel like even if you weren't pushing yourself, you were still reading, right? Like that's still good. And obviously like it's still turned into like a lifelong thing, which is great. So I don't know. I just always something I'm sort of with these kids now, I'm always like, do you want me to read to you? Like, we're going to read the same book. We can read a different book. Oh, we're going to read the same book. Okay. Well, I did reread Frankenstein, so I guess I can't judge,
Yeah. I feel like with kids, my feeling is that like it is best for them to read stuff, at least for a lot of kids to read stuff that is a little bit older than their age. But like it's usually a bad idea to really push it on them.
Yeah.
Like, there's a real difference between encountering something that's a little too old for you in a context where, like, you made the choice for yourself and you can kind of opt out or,
Yeah.
based on your comfort. There's one of the formative reading experiences of my life, and the person who did this is certainly not going to hear this, but if she does, don't feel bad, but it was weird and you shouldn't have done this. I was like 10, and I grew up at a YMCA in Indianapolis, and my mom, because I was homeschooled, so I didn't have any school to be at. I would just be at the Y, where my mom ran the child care center. And so she, she hired all the people that I hung out with day to day, like all these adults that took care of me and my friends and stuff. Most of my friends being, other homeschoolers or 4-year-olds, because that's who's in a child care center at the YMCA. And so, they're like, you're a smart, precocious kid, Mike. You like reading. And this one person gives me The Horse Whisperer. Have you read The Horse Whisperer?
Forever ago. Forever ago.
It is a very different experience reading that book as a young person who has read like essentially zero anything with any sex in it. Like, I think the formative sexy book I read before that was like, it wasn't a Pern book, but it was like in that universe. It was called Gold Climbers, I think.
Yeah.
And it featured there was a moment where a girl character did a somewhat erotic dance that was described for like 2 seconds, and it was like, that's sex to me now because of this book. And then The Horse Whisperer blows in, and it's like, well, get a load of this nonsense. This is crazy. And I remember, so I read like partway through it, and I got to the point where I realized what kind of book it was, the sort where it like literally does have the phrase steely manhood.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like, why did you give this to me?
I read, my dad bought me the book Wicked by Gregory Maguire. I don't know how familiar you are with the source material, but the book version of which of course he was like, she loves like the musical.
Yeah.
And I was like in early high school, I think. And so he's like, and so it's the book that the musical's based on. And I like absolutely like would pull that book out at slumber parties and be like, you guys want to read this part of this book? And all my friends would be like, yes. And like, we were so thrilled. And I was like, my dad bought it. He has no idea that there's sex stuff in it. And then of course later my mom was like, you bought her that book, but yeah, there's like some stuff, which I haven't read it since I was that age. So I don't even remember, but like the thrill of being given a book. And, I remember too, I had a terrible reputation in high school with my friend's mom. She hated me, which is crazy because I was such a good kid. Like we were reading, like literally us going out in high school was going to the Barnes and Noble and reading manga. Like that was what we did. We were such good kids, and we loved books and like we like read a lot still before, like for fun. And I loved the book Memoirs of a Geisha. And which I'm not sure if you've read, but like I right at the time I loved it, right? I read it multiple times.
Yeah.
I still got it on my bookshelf, and I lent it to my friend Hillary to read, and her mom found it and she was like, what is this trash? Like she was really religious and like super Catholic. And she like thought I was apparently like a deep sinner because I had brought this like filth to her child. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, there is sex in that book, but it's really not that it's pretty age appropriate for like teenagers to be able to read this book. And I guess sorry that you think I'm the coolest teen you've ever met, but because I let your daughter read Memoirs of a Geisha, which
I was that kid for most of the people that I hung out with too, because I was the most I was the coolest kid they knew in a sense, because when you're homeschooled, just having any exposure to popular culture at all, like everybody else I knew was so Christian and they were so protected that literally one time I said the word marijuana in a friend's house, like making a joke, never had seen or used it, didn't even quite know what it was. And the mom sprinted into the room to make sure that I wasn't getting her daughter high. And it was so funny to be the bad boy. Meanwhile, to anyone else outside that context, I was the meekest little geek. Like I was like 3 feet tall. I was such a little dude. But to them, I was scary.
Yeah, I was like tracing pictures of Goku from Dragon Ball Z. I am not corrupting anybody here, right? Like,
exactly.
It's fine. Your daughter's fine. She turned out great. I'm sorry that you were insane, but like, She actually, I mean, speaking of, I mean, she's one of those parents that was like so strict about this kind of stuff that her daughter basically like went in the opposite direction, right? Like because
Yeah.
she fought so hard against like keeping all of this, like she took her Nickelback CD away from her, like she wasn't, like all this kind of stuff, and so and she, yeah, I just always was like, well, that really backfired. Like I don't know, it's you should have just let her read the book and like listen to the music, and she was a good kid. Like it kind of like
Yeah.
avoided missed the part where her kid was a good kid and didn't trust her to be able to like experience some of this stuff,
Yeah.
and seek it out in like age appropriate ways, and just I think kind of missed out, like I don't know. My parents took me to some fucked up movies, and you laugh about it at some point, and then you're like, I can't believe I can't believe we went and did that. I can't believe we saw The Big Lebowski together as a family.
Yeah, yeah. My family they were very protective by and large, but every now and then something would slip through. I have a confession. You reminded me of a book I recently read that I put this on my Christmas list because I had read it's called The Mysterious Disappearance of the Marquise of Loria by
Ooh.
Jose Donoso. Who wrote The Obscene Bird of Night, which I read a little bit ago and I really loved. But he's like 500 pages of just depraved madness.
Sick.
And I put this book on my wish list, and I shared that list with my mother. And so she purchased it for me, and it didn't occur to me that this is the filthiest pornography I've ever seen. And I just hope to God she didn't look at the summary, like she didn't notice what she was buying, because like it's really dirty.
That's so funny. That's like when my mom, we had the Outlander books on our family shelf for years and years. And then I started watching the show and I was like, Mom,
Yeah.
Mom, oh my God.
Yeah.
She's like, the books are so good. She bought the books for me. And I was like, Mother, these are smut. These are smut books. Not that I'm opposed.
No.
I have a great, whatever. But I know where I got it from. Know where I got it from, Mother. You can't say shit. Not that she would, but she always tells the story though, so she grew up in a strict home and she was reading like a spy novel, and there's a part, and it wasn't like a James Bond character, but it was like a James Bond like knockoff character or something. And he wakes up in a cell, and she came downstairs and she was like, Mom, I'm reading this book on what is knacked? What does knacked mean? And her mom was like, knacked? What do you mean? And my mom read the line, and it was like, he wakes up in a cell and he's NAKED. And her mom like took the book out of her hand and was like, go upstairs. I mean, it wasn't even like sexual. He just like woke up naked in a cell because he was like a spy and had been captured or whatever. And my mom was always just like, what is that horrid word that I read? Like had absolutely terrified her that she had done something terrible. And so for like years. But it also made her be like, there's a whole world out there that I don't understand and I must know more about. So
Where men are knacked.
where men are knacked.
That's beautiful.
But she's like the best reader. Speaking of, I mean, my mom reads like hundreds of books a year. She reads like a book every couple days. It's wild. And I'm just in awe all the time. And she's in a book club, and she's the one who's always recommending stuff to me. And I'm like, well, part of it also is that she has a habit and she's got a Kindle and she like just, but she reads like tough stuff too. It's not like just reading smut or whatever. Not that that's bad. Again, love it. But
No, great to read smut.
I sort of look up to somebody as like with her reading habits, I think, is because she reads like some really deep, complicated stuff. And I'm like, I read one and the mystery was that the girl was dead the whole time, and I figured it out 20 pages in. And I stuck with it because I was stubborn. So I got to figure out a happy medium sometimes.
Well, I don't know if did we get to the things you had on your list? You had a list of a couple of things you wanted to make sure you mentioned that you were reading. Did we cover them?
Oh yeah, it was mostly the white men getting themselves into situations.
Yes.
And I would recommend, I loved those David Grann books, if you haven't read any of those. And I actually really enjoyed the John Krakauer one, which I also, honestly, the reason I read Into Thin Air is because there's a wrestler that we all know named Darby Allin who went to Everest, and I went down a wormhole about Everest, and I read all this stuff, and it's about the expedition in the 90s, and it was fascinating, and none of us should be going to Everest. And then,
No.
rereading Frankenstein has really gotten me like rehyped about it. And I'm literally excited to reread it again with this annotated version, which apparently I think they do some other old books like this in a way, which is really neat. So I'm going to check that out. So, but yeah, I feel
Yeah, I've never
I feel,
read that way.
Yeah, I haven't done it either. And it literally like picks apart the differences like in her word choices from the first version to that third version that most people know. So I'm really curious, especially with the like moral stuff with Frankenstein's character, because he knew what he was doing and what he was doing was bad.
I'm experimenting with sign-offs for the podcast.
Ooh,
so
fun.
far, what we have is Thank You, Tony, which is the name of my malest cat, my most male of the 3 cats. How do you feel about Thank You, Tony? Is there anything you would propose as an alternative?
No, I love to talk to a cat, so that sounds great.
Yeah, he's not here right now. He's actually contributed very little to this recording.
Well,
I'm not sure where in the house he is.
Just like a man. No, I'm kidding. That's terrible. No, but I love.
No, you're right.
Yeah, you know, I didn't want to say it, but I said it. So, and I stand by it.
Yeah.
Tony's the only man I respect, and it's a cat. So,
on that note, thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
All right.
Great.
And that's the weird thing about that. It took me forever to understand what that was actually for, because of course with the lag, you never clap at the same time.
Yeah, I was always like, why are we trying to clap at the same time? That's crazy.
The reason you do that is actually to measure what the lag is, so that like in theory I can now just sort of like slide your clap over so it's the same as my clap and the timing should work better. Now, in practice, I feel like the lag on Zoom, it differs from day to day, but like I'm not feeling a lot of lag today, so it may not matter at all.
Yeah. Sweet.
But it makes me feel like a real podcaster to do the clap.
Yeah, and again, I'm looking at a microphone that I have off camera. It's just there. It has a USB, which my laptop does not have a port for, because Mac doesn't do anything useful. And then I even got my little dongle to connect it, but in order to do that, I have to unplug my headphones, and my other ones don't work. So technology's great, and it's making all of our lives so much better.
Yeah, I've been in this weird little hell for the last like 40 minutes because This is only my second time using this exact setup to record, and the last time that I did began with like 30 minutes of trying to persuade all of the different like things to hook up, because for some reason like Zoom will commandeer your audio and redirect it so it's a different device going into a different tube or something. And so this time I got it set up about 40 minutes ago. And then I was like, I'm not going to touch anything. I'm going to sneak in my lunch real quick. So I'm sitting here with my headphones on next to the microphone, eating these noodles that I made. That I fried some veggies and peanuts for, and I mixed them in there. And then I'm trying to eat quietly, rather than like move the microphone like 2 inches away from my face, because I'm apparently that nervous about fucking it up.
You're doing it for the art. You're here for the art.
But every now and then I would like eat a noodle a little too loud, and then I would be hearing the chewing sounds inside my head, which like I feel like your brain just sort of naturally filters out the same way it does the side of the tip of your nose to like protect your sanity. But then I would also hear it from the outside and feel like I was losing my mind. Again, I could have just moved the microphone.
No,
I don't know why I didn't do it.
Pizza.